Good day, Internet. This is DTNS Live for Monday, April 5th, 2025. Some call it Cinco de Mayo. From Studio Animal House, I'm Sarah Lane.
From Studio Siete in Los Angeles, I'm Tom Merritt.
From Toronto, I'm Jenn Cutter.
And I'm the show's producer, Roger Chang.
Daily Tech News Show Live is made possible by its listeners. Thanks to all of you, including Brad, Kevin Morgan, and Paul Thiessen.
Hey! Always good to thank our patrons because you make the show possible. And welcome all to DTNS Live, the show where we discuss the tech news to help us all understand it a little bit better. Jenn Cutter, you might not have been watching the basketball game I was watching last night, but how are you in sports world? Because I know hockey's a thing.
Yes, Leafs are in the second round, which is great, except that it's Florida, which is not great. Not that Tampa would have been better. But last night, I was watching the Blues and Jets in the double OT, and Tom, I'm very sorry.
Thank you, Jen. We'll make it through this time of normal Blues playoffs feelings of giving up your lead in the last 1.6 seconds of regulation time.
I would say respect Tom's privacy in this difficult time, but we're all here already, so you know.
It's funny. I was texting with a bunch of friends who were not Blues fans, but were like, "Oh my gosh, this game!" And commiserating about it. It's us Blues fans. Craig knows out there listening. We're used to it. This is normal, and we're like, good run, gentlemen. Well done.
Well, in NBA world, my Warriors beat the Rockets, Game 7.
Well done.
So
yeah.
it was
NBA playoffs are crazy this year.
I know. Oh, it's so good. I'm watching all of them. But I went into a store like yesterday morning, like way before the game. And I don't know, like the guy who was working behind the counter was sort of like, "You gonna watch the game later?" Something, I don't know. Maybe I was buying like snacks that looked like I was going to a party. They were only for me.
Sure.
And I was like, "Yeah, I am. Yeah." And he goes, "Lakers." And I'm like, "No, they're out." And he was like, "Oh. Okay." Which just goes to show you we are either, very invested in sports or not.
Yeah.
And, there's no right or wrong.
No, it's funny. We went to Trader Joe's on Saturday and I was wearing my Blues hat and the checker was like, "Oh, that Blues game, they had an amazing comeback." And I was like, "Oh yeah. Do you follow hockey?" He's like, "I follow game 7s. Whenever there's a game 7, I watch it
Nice.
in any sport." I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's good."
That does tend to be an exciting game if you get to game 7.
No, exactly. It's
like everybody on
home,
both
right?
sides is very invested at that point. So, yeah. Well, we are here to talk tech news. So let's get into it with the quick hits.
Apple filed its appeal of that court ruling we talked about all last week, the one that orders it to stop restricting companies from how they link out to alternate payment methods in the U.S. Apple must also continue to allow the links without charge. They can't try to collect a fee on it for U.S. developers, even while they are appealing the ruling.
An attack breached TeleMessage, which provides modified versions of encrypted messaging apps like Signal and Telegram for U.S. government use. This exposed archived messages, contact information, and some login credentials, with some data also tied to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, to Coinbase, and to Scotiabank, also access due to lack of end-to-end encryption. TeleMessage's parent company, Portland, Oregon-based Smarsh, said it was suspending all of its service out of abundance of caution as it investigates.
Novo Energy, the battery joint venture between Volvo Cars and the now bankrupt Northvolt, is cutting 150 jobs, around half of its workforce. The company's plan to build a large battery factory in Gothenburg, Sweden is nearly complete, but battery production hasn't begun, and Novo is still searching for a new tech partner.
Microsoft has patched a Windows 10 bug that broke start menu jump lists after a March feature rollout. The issue affected version 22H2 and disrupted access to recent files from right-click menus. Microsoft paused the rollout on April 25th after the bug became known, and now says affected systems should be fixed automatically, although users are advised to restart, stay connected to the internet, all that good stuff, particularly if you're a Home or Pro Edition user.
South Korea, the Republic of South Korea, is developing its own Hyperloop system, Hypertube, with plans to reach speeds of more than 1,200 kilometers per hour. Test runs aren't expected until 2037, though, and commercial rides would not start until 2038.
Meta's new Meta AI app launched last month. By default, it remembers user chats, including potentially sensitive topics like fertility or finances, to personalize responses and train its models. It also does not offer an incognito mode or clear opt-out from data retention. Chat data may also be used for ads in the future, and users can manage some memory settings, but some believe the potential privacy risks outweigh the benefits.
Waymo announced in a blog post today that it plans to expand its robotaxi fleet from 1,500 to 3,500 vehicles by 2026, so, sometime next year, after receiving its final batch of Jaguar I-Paces. It's also prepping for 2 new models beyond the Jaguar model, the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Zeekr RT minivan, and it also is looking to expand service in other U.S. areas, Atlanta, Miami, and Washington, D.C. The Verge's Andrew Hawkins notes that the move comes amid some growing pressure. You got Tesla coming for Waymo and others in the AV space. Now, I am the Waymo person on the show. I know this because where I live in Los Angeles, Waymos are very prevalent. Waymo is like not a big part of my personal ride-sharing life, but they are my neighbors on the road, very much so. But I know that many folks are just like, yeah, driverless cars, never saw one before type thing. It's always fun the first time you see the first one. But I wanted to poll the group if we are rolling out a little bit more slowly than what Waymo had said that it wanted to be by this time next year, which was more like 20,000 rather than 3,500, and not even necessarily Jaguar models, but other models that the company may be working with. What are we thinking? How are we feeling about this?
Honestly, I feel like the temperature has been everybody saying autonomous cars aren't going to come as fast as you think. Autonomous cars are nowhere. This is all marketing hype. And so rather than comparing it to what Waymo may have said in the past, I look at it and go, oh, there's actually cars on the road. It's actually becoming common. And I know The Verge said there's pressure from Tesla, but I don't see a Tesla service yet. So I don't feel like Waymo has a lot of pressure. Where there is pressure is China, because you have actual autonomous vehicle services on the road in China. It seems like China and the United States are leading the way in this. I look at this and my reaction was like, oh, I think this is real now. I think this is something where we might actually start seeing it show up in more places.
It's funny you say that, because when I saw this, I was thinking, not only is it real, but it's no longer we're just testing it. We're trialing it in a very selected low. Now it feels like, oh yeah, this is something that works, that we can expand out to other metro areas, because there is a business case where this product that we have works. And I mean, whether it's 3,000 or 20,000, the fact that they're even a full-time service that rolls around autonomously, I think. And
that Sarah sees all the time, right? It's not like, I guess they're testing in my area. I think I saw one once. Like, it's a regular thing for you.
They're on the I-10 now. I mean, this is like going 75 miles an hour, like the rest of us. Well,
and I should probably stay behind that.
1 mile over 65.
I was going to say, the Waymo probably isn't going over the speed limit, unlike everyone else on the 10.
Well, the first time
That's
I
the
saw
only reason
one,
you could stick them out.
So this is for anybody that in LA. This is a east to west freeway that is widely used, which is also sort of among the Waymo its own map. Really, there's a lot of middle of town, east to west. Stuff that Waymo does cover, although, Tom and I have talked about this before. I can't go to Roger's house in a Waymo. It won't take me there. It'll take me just.
It says he doesn't exist.
Only so far, right?
No, it's because there's an invisible force field that prevents anyone from ever
the invisible
reaching.
fence.
Roger
I don't know.
will
They
drop
should
his
just take that
shields,
down.
so we can't.
But so on that freeway, it used to be, as I understand, it was Waymo was doing testing on surface streets, because it's you're getting to freeway types of speeds, then people are going to get freaked out. Well, they're on the freeway now. So, I mean, it's working. It's definitely working.
What do you
I mean,
got in
there are
Toronto?
Waymos every single morning that I walk my dog in the morning, and I'm crossing the street, and there's, stoplights and pedestrians. There's a school near me. It's like the Waymos are just hanging. Yeah, they're just doing their thing like everybody else.
Yeah, it's all kind of staggering to me because Toronto's way behind the curve in this sort of thing. But like for me mentally, I was like, okay, good. I'm not going to run into one on the Gardiner doing like 75 in the construction zone when nobody else is. But literally like 2 days ago, we found out there's going to be a test of the little, like not Waymos, we're not there yet. The tiny little delivery robots are going to be going up and down side streets that are limited to like 40 kilometers an hour. And people are upset about this because they don't want the robots messing with the bikes and pedestrians and school zones, but also because, again, since it's a test, these delivery robots are going to be followed by cars with 2 people on them. So they're like, wait, you're going to double the traffic in our already congested downtown suburban areas.
40 kilometers an hour also seems fast. I mean,
It's like 30 miles an
not
hour?
in a good way.
Well, our highway speed
right.
is 100 kilometers and in some cases 110, which would be really hilarious to see like
Are these things
Waymos
going on the sidewalk or the regular road?
It sounds like the regular road, but people are
It's concerned
because
can you imagine like 30 miles an hour on the sidewalk? It's like
Oh, man.
coming through.
yeah, because like
Somebody's getting a pizza
cyclists
delivery.
are kind of under attack in Toronto as it stands. So like they're really upset. It's like, is this going to cut into our lanes? Is this going to respect crosswalks? Is this why there's people following behind it because they're just going to
okay.
manually control all of this stuff?
So these are more like the Neuro ones. They're like small vehicles. I was imagining
no, tiny
sidewalk rolly
little-
cooler type thing.
Bigger than that, but
These are like
when it
three-wheelers.
delivers,
Yeah.
you'll
So
still
they
have
go
to
on the
go to the
regular-
curb to pick up your delivery if it shows up with one of these.
Right. And
But
probably
you've got
the
for-
chase. They have to have chase safety drivers because there's no room for a person inside,
Yes.
and because it's on the regular road, they want people right there. But they won't have to have those safety drivers forever. These things run in Boston and Houston just fine. So hopefully it'll turn out well.
Yeah, well, the city council was surprised that the test was happening here, so we'll see if there's
really?
any future litigation. They're like, wait, we didn't approve this. Who are these people? Why are they on the roads?
It's the Toronto Robotics and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory at the University of Toronto, apparently, that's conducting the
Yeah, and
test.
with I think Magna Corp as well, and
Yeah, they got a corporate.
there's more to come on this story locally.
Okay, yeah.
But I get
That's
I get
interesting,
your
though.
point, Jen, of the all right, so now we've got the 3-wheeler, and then we have a car behind the 3-wheeler to make sure that it doesn't do something weird. I don't know how fun that job is. The person who's like, all right, I'm just following the 3-wheeler. But again, you're getting data. This is how these things do start. So yeah.
I'm happy they're starting there rather than starting with a full self-driving car during construction season.
Where people are like, what's that? It's me. It's my pizza order.
It's interesting because one of the interesting things about I've always thought about like how society changes is when these become so prevalent and so ubiquitous where it's just like, oh yeah, they don't stand out. Will it just sort of incentivize other things to be sort of autonomous and people not really worry about it? Like if you get like an autonomous bus, you don't need a bus driver. Or
of course. I mean, there's the the gig economy part of the conversation. At the same time, it wasn't my neighborhood. I was way out at the beach in the west side of LA, and I was leaving. I had my car with me that was parked on the street to come back to my house to do the show. And there was a Waymo just sort of like idling right in front of me. And I was sort of like, oh, yeah, somebody's gotten a Waymo. And I sat there for a minute and I was like, what's happening here? What's Waymo doing? Just because Waymo doesn't just park and chill. It's like the whole thing up top is like spinning the whole time because the cameras have to be active. So it's like it looks like it's about to do something even if it's not doing anything. And I realized, it's just designed to park itself and wait for a fare. because having them on the street or on the freeway, what's the point of that? Like, why should they be clogging up the street unless they're actually doing something specific for a person? And I've seen that more and more too. It's like the Waymo just being like, I'm waiting for you.
Or it's thinking of something else. It's like, oh, really? This is all I. This
It's
is
like
all
I don't want to drive right now. I want to think.
My
about
entire
something else.
existence is to pick up people and drop them
Well,
off.
I know,
I could do so much more.
I could. Do
I have lasers.
What if I had wings? Well, yeah. So, autonomous cars. If you have thoughts, feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. We know you have thoughts, so send it to us. All right, Tom. So Google is putting together a movie and TV production unit, but it's not making shows for YouTube or any other Google platform, right?
Yeah, it sounds weird, doesn't it? Business Insider reports that Google is creating a production unit called 100 Zeros. I don't know that is terribly significant, but Business Insider figured out what the name is. The idea is to work with existing studios to distribute TV shows. So there's all kinds of production companies in television, and one of them is one that gets shows off the ground and then works with other studios, sometimes to even shoot them and distribute them. So that's what Google would be doing here. And the aim, according to Business Insider, is to encourage those TV shows and movies to show Google products in a good light. Now, immediately, all of our minds are going to jump to product placement. Like, oh, they just want to advertise. Google already does that. They don't need this for that. So they're not spinning up 100 zeros just for product placement. My guess is they want to have narratives out there the way Apple does. There was some stories a while ago that Apple, I think it was Ryan Johnson, was like, yeah, Apple doesn't let villains use Apple products. And I think Google wants something like that, where they're like, we want to show positive uses of Google products, but get them in shows that aren't from Google. So you're not sitting there watching it and going like, well, this was made by Google, of course, right? They want it to just kind of endemically be out there in shows and movies that you watch, which I don't think anybody else does. Apple does this for its own stuff. And then Amazon uses its stuff mostly to push ad sales, not its own products. So this would be interesting, don't you think?
It feels very much what car companies have done for decades, where they have the hero car in a movie, whether it's like in a Transformers movie.
That's product placement, though.
Yeah, but
not the car company making the show.
Yeah. So, well, no, I understand, but like the whole idea of putting our products in a positive light, right?
Yeah, sure.
So,
yeah.
So, I mean, like when you mentioned Apple, the first thing that popped in my mind was Independence Day, because that was the hero moment, is with Jeff Goldblum's character uploads the virus from his MacBook, destroying.
But again, that's product placement. What Apple does now is they make whole shows. They make, like they have an entire series, but then they also distribute it. So Google's trying to like kind of cover that up by saying like it'll be a whole show and there'll be some positive Google stuff in it, but you won't know it was made by 100 zeros.
I wonder how much. I mean, I'm sure there have been some surveys taken so that companies feel like the bad guy should not be using their tech.
Yeah, right.
And I do understand. Like, I watch a fair amount of Apple TV Plus. And you always notice, like, okay, yeah, they're all using iPhones. Like, of course,
it's kind of a giveaway sometimes. You're like, wait, that guy's not using an iPhone. I think he must be evil.
Right. But it's sort of like, why?
It's called foreshadowing.
Like, what if it's a smart villain? I mean, we can't all be heroes. Everybody, we can't all be.
That'll
just,
be like a
Pollyanna
Windows phone
out here.
Well, you said
well,
Windows
oh, go ahead, Jen.
Okay, like, because once you said Windows, I was like, oh yeah, Vampire Diaries. They kind of sponsored by Microsoft, so all the characters used Bing. It was like, let's Bing that. It was just so obtrusive. It took you right out of it.
Oh, yeah.
But again, that does count more as product placement.
Microsoft didn't make Vampire Diaries.
No,
Google,
they did not.
Google's stepping it up and like, we want to make the Vampire Diaries and distribute it so we can guarantee that our stuff,
So
but that sounds like product placement to me. It's like,
but no,
Google
it's just going above and beyond, right?
That a bunch of producers are going to do, and saying like, and also they all use Pixel phones, right?
Right.
Okay.
It's just getting in on the ground floor and making sure your product is placed, I guess.
So,
Yeah.
I mean,
so it's not just like, hey, can you put our Windows Phone in this? Can you have them use Bing? It's let's have the entire plot work to the advantage of our products, right? So that people are using Google to solve the crime, and it's not giving them hallucinations where you are told to eat rocks.
There's a part of this that feels like a horrible idea to me, but at the same time, it's like a good narrative is a good narrative, and these sorts of things happen organically anyway. Sometimes it's like if you're, being like, let's do some reverse image on Google search, and figure out things.
Well,
it's like
I
people do stuff like that. If you
Oh,
get
just
creative.
Gemini.
It sounds like the next step in the advertorial, where you used to have advertisements that masqueraded as some sort of informational packet, whether it was a video or book or whatever. Like,
It sounds like it's beyond that to me.
But that's what I'm saying. It feels like the next stage. It feels like, okay.
But that's what Apple already does.
Yeah. But like, so is this competing on that level if they're producing and they're marketing and doing the rest other than actually making it? I mean, at some point, just feels like, they just spent more money on an advertisement than other people.
I mean,
did.
Apple does exactly this. That's where my head is at. Is like, oh, this sounds like what Apple does, right? They don't always. They contract people to produce shows for them. They commission the shows, but they also distribute them. So where it's different is Google saying, but it's fine if this one's on Max and that one's on Netflix and that one's on Peacock, right? We're not going to keep them all on a Google platform like YouTube.
So I'm going to time travel real quickly to a Nintendo example, because of course I will. The Wizard was a movie in like late 80s, early 90s, where the entire point of the movie was getting these kids to a Mario 3 competition, which would have been cool if those were real. But Nintendo didn't make the movie, but it was the entire plot of the movie. Kids saw the movie because they wanted to see Mario 3 before you could play Mario 3.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So where does that fall? Is that product placement, or is that kind of where Google
Nintendo
is
didn't
going?
have a production company, though, did they? Or did they?
No, because I'm trying to look at like basic wiki stuff. There's only so much information on movies from that era, but it didn't sound like we all know they were driving it. Like there was a reason here, but it wasn't produced by them. They didn't distribute it. It's not like the Mario movie where it is a really obvious tie.
I'm guessing what 100 Zeros is meant to do is come up with shows like Ted Lasso, with shows like The Morning Show, with shows like that, and then work Google into a good light in them as part of that. But they won't be clearly as obviously as The Wizard was, like promoting one thing.
This is also, I mean, every time, I don't know, at some point in my life, I became aware of like, oh, if there's a box of Wheaties like in the foreground of the scene, like somebody paid for that. But now when I see that stuff, it's like I kind of write it down like, oh yeah, no, that's okay. Now we've got Nutella, and there's Dell. He's using a Dell. It's pretty common. It can be egregious, and where you're like, this is too much. But for the most part, I feel like we've gotten to a point where it's like, yeah, there's some ad placement going on here. Maybe you notice it, maybe you don't. But as long as it doesn't change the narrative to a point where it feels ridiculous,
Well,
I don't have a huge problem with it. If it does do that, then
when you
we're all
see
going to
Apple
talk about the
products-
Wizard, like Jenn said.
When you see Apple products in an Apple TV show, does it feel the same way as that product placement you're talking about?
Totally. It's like, I mean, sure. I mean, lots of people use iPhones. It's not weird to do that in a show. But it's like, you like zoom in on the iPhone. Like,
Well, they make sure that the
there's more
logo
to
and
it
everything
going
is
on.
the right way
Yeah,
up.
you get the beauty shots.
Right.
I mean, as long as it doesn't break the sort of verisimilitude where it pulls you out of that story. Like, I mean, well, this is the thing. Oh,
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. The shows that 100 Zeros make need to be good for this to work. Otherwise, it is just product placement, right? You need to have compelling narratives, and that's why I'm curious. Like, who are they staffing this up with? Because they're going to need to have shows that Max and Netflix and others are going to want to buy.
Yep.
Because Everyone's really used to this now. In terms of sports, it's ubiquitous. Everyone's using surfaces on the bench to look at clips and on the news desk, and it's just visible all of the
Sports
time.
Sports is a great example of this.
You don't even think about it anymore.
Yeah. Do you think that like nobody has any other option than Gatorade? No, that's what they drink because Gatorade paid for it. So
yeah, but this is I can't wait to hear more about this.
I mean, in a side note, in a weird kind of reverse way, when they made Knight Rider, they actually had to beg GM for a car to do that show, and so there was at some point there was a mutual beneficial relationship. Hey, your show broadcasts the fact that Trans Ams are cool, so I'm going to buy a Trans Am. But like the show didn't have the money to buy the car, and so they had to beg GM to loan them a few.
Yeah. I imagine that will not be a problem for Google with hundreds of those. Hey, folks, we want to hear from you. We have a survey out. We always do this once a year, and it lets us know how we're doing. What are we doing well? Tell us that. But what are you like, this would work better if you did it this way. So take the survey if you haven't already. Big thanks to everybody who has. I know several hundred of you already have, but if you haven't yet, please do go by the end of this week. Let us know what you think. It takes a couple of minutes. It won't hurt at all. And there's questions about pie to keep you entertained. dailytechnewsshow.com/survey.
Self-improvement, self-help, stuff that we as humans often turn to just kind of, be the better versions of ourselves. But it can be a path that has some pitfalls. If you bring chatbots into the equation, you might say, what is going on here? So Jen, you've been looking at the story. Tell us more.
Oh my goodness, there is a lot of ground to cover, and I'm sure everyone at home has their own experiences in their life of either with themselves or their friends. When I have a problem, I turn to a search engine. How do I change my headlight, which I had to do recently? What's the best air fryer? So why wouldn't people turn to a search engine, especially one that talks back, for their emotional problems too? And if not just problems, maybe just growth and organizational. The Rolling Stone dropped an incredible article titled, "People are losing loved ones to AI-fueled spiritual fantasies," detailing how constant reliance on chatbots can cause certain people to spiral. This is not an everybody problem. This is still a very specific problem. Like if the AI told me, hey, you need to take apart your transmission to change your headlight, I know that's wrong. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to look for a second source. But when it comes to like deep emotional things, and if you are in a bad spot, how do you discern what is good information and what is not?
Yeah, and the thing to keep in mind on this is there's been some really good science showing that chatbots can be effective in reducing symptoms of depression and anxiety and eating disorders, but they're also a lot of that science saying they are not a replacement for a therapist. So this is very anecdotal. I actually take issue with Rolling Stone's headlines. People are losing loved ones. That is meant to make you panic and click and read. And everything in this story is anecdotal. It's all people have said. So there should be some good studies come out of something like this to find out, okay, how many people does this affect? How does it affect them? And then most importantly, what are the safeguards to prevent a person from spiraling? But the fact that it happens at all, I understand, Jen, why it causes people to go, whoa, that's dangerous.
Well, in the Rolling Stone article, Jen, I know you looked at this closely. The anecdotes are troubling. It's so-and-so started with a chatbot. 5 weeks later, they were saying things that didn't make any sense, or were concerning those around them who love them, and in some cases, divorces happened, or basically like this is not your therapist, and many people who have turned to chatbots, not just ChatGPT. I mean, I've tried it. Before, I was just being like, well, let's see what kind of advice I get. Maybe I'm having an off day type thing. This is not, for the most part, I don't think like a rampant problem for humanity. But also, for those who maybe should be on a certain medication, maybe should be seeing a certain kind of therapist that could help them work out some stuff, and just getting don't know, advice from this, what's the word that they use when it's being overly positive to you? It's being
Sycophantic.
sycophantic, yes.
I think they called it
then,
glazing, too.
depending on the person that you are and what you might be going through, that might take you, into more of like a derailment era.
This is the thing. It really depends on the person, right? There are instances where I have known, classmates of mine who need to have someone literally administer their medication to them because they're not self-aware enough to know the dosage and the handle, all the rest of it. Even though some of us may think it's trivial, that particular person wasn't mentally in the state that they would be able to do that. And I think that would go doubly for something where, especially if you're very self-aware of what your needs are or what your emotional and mental state is, you might have a better idea of how to navigate those and say like, oh, this chatbot's giving me bunk info, or this chatbot's giving me relevant, useful information. Other people might not be able to kind of figure that out. And that's why they've always said, like, in relation with, an actual licensed therapist or psychologist to kind of help you navigate that, in order to be that person that provides or at least double checks your work so you're not careening off into an area that might not be so hot.
Yeah, I put I asked Gemini, it's like, oh, should I use ChatGPT as a therapist? And obviously it was not going to agree with that. And it said like, hey, you can ask it questions, but also it is not a replacement for therapy. You need to talk to other people. And the main benefit, I would say, in heavy air quotes, to something like this getting a lot of attention is that these models keep getting refined. So now there is more attention to refining these models. It is why AI is no longer recommending how much glue on pizza or your daily intake of rocks. These things will get cleaned up, but the danger right now is I really hope people have those trusted people in their lives to notice if someone is slipping or slipping fast, to get them more competent help.
One of the other things about this that it is worrisome to me, because let's say you're somebody who's, I'm not even being like, oh, somebody's so crazy. It's like, we don't talk about people that way, but somebody's going through a hard time in life. Maybe they need to push through some sort of roadblock mentally, or a variety of things that either medication, a therapist, or a combination of both could help them get through. That costs money. Yeah. And you don't, there are a lot of people, myself included, like, I would love to go to therapy once a week. I can't afford that. That's just not something that I can do right now. And so I think that using a tool like this and considering it the same kind of therapy that you might actually pay a lot of money for, or even some sort of subsidized cost. If you're using free ChatGPT, it's like, it's not the same. And if you know the difference, then you know the difference. But I think that people might be getting caught up in some of this.
Well, Ontario has a really neat kind of parallel. So during early COVID in Ontario, through OHIP, our medical program, we could actually sign up for online therapy. It wasn't face-to-face. There were chatbots, and a lot of it was done by email. So that progression from, okay, I'm talking to a real therapist this way, what would be the difference between having this kind of conversation that does not look different when you are doing it through ChatGPT or other online therapy services that have questionable provenance. Again, if you are new to this stuff, if you have not done the research on this, if you don't have people in your life who are familiar with this realm of medical science, you are not going to quite appreciate the difference between the quality of advice that you get.
Right.
Yeah, I think the important thing is is someone needs to study where this is correlation and where it's causation. Mm-hmm. Because there are people in these anecdotes who would have had these same things happen even if ChatGPT didn't exist. There are people in these anecdotes who would never have had these things happen if ChatGPT didn't exist. And so if you want to create those filters and keep the positive benefits that have been shown, but eliminate the negative effects, you need to know more about when it actually causes the problem and when it doesn't. But to me, even beyond that, the important thing is all-purpose LLMs are not the best for anything. They're not the best for this or anything else like it. You need to have specific things for specific jobs. And so something that has been trained specifically on therapy that is part of a medical system and will refer you onto the person when you get to that stage in the conversation, that is going to be much more helpful to people than just ChatGPT. Same point, to your point, Jen. People are going to use ChatGPT because it's free. So figuring out what those filters are to be able to have them say like, hey, you're starting to go into an area that isn't helpful. Let's redirect you would be important to know without shutting down the things that would be helpful.
Indeed. Yeah. So if anybody has an anecdote about this, you don't have to get super personal, but, if you or somebody else has had either a good experience with any sort of chatbot that's like, you know what, it actually really helped, or, oh, it really didn't, let us know. Feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. All right, Roger, a good user interface can make or break a device's user experience. We all have our favorites. Seems with cars, though, the way forward may be going backward. Why?
Yeah, so everyone knows I love pressing buttons, everyone's buttons, especially the ones on cars. And Wired has validated my experience with a story about the return of physical buttons and knobs on car dashboards. Now, the article highlights that one of the major shifts why this is happening is because the Euro NCAP, or the new car assessment program, Europe's version, a crash test body, is incentivizing automakers to fit physical, easy-to-use, tactile controls on cars because it actually makes the cars safer to operate. The push comes after consumers who, they did a couple of polls in a couple of car magazines. One of them, UK's What Car, they did a survey around 1,400 drivers, and 89% of them said they preferred physical buttons over something on a touchscreen where you had to activate, whether it was a radio or maybe the windshield wiper or the HVAC controls for heating and cooling. And one of the things I wanted to find out is, like, in your own experience, do you tend to find a physical tactile knob a much better user experience than just having to go through a screen? Having had both, maybe because I've just been driving cars with knobs for the longest time, I prefer a knob because I know where it is on the dash and I don't have to take my eyes off the road in order to turn up the heat or to turn down the fan or hit the radio.
And don't get too hung up on knobs. It could be a dial. It could be
it could be a dial, yes.
But we're talking about a physical thing versus a touchscreen.
Exactly. A physical.
No, it has to be a square knob every time.
I was already imagining somebody in the audience going like, well, I don't want knobs for everything.
I mean, I switches.
So I have, so my Volvo, has a center dash touchscreen, which not every single thing goes through that touchscreen, but pretty much everything does. Like, you have a few physical buttons on the, like, if I want to turn up the sound on the radio type thing, it's like I have a button on the wheel. And if I don't know, just want to do like certain things that are, cruise control stuff, it's like that all happens on the wheel, and that's physical button stuff. Everything else goes through that touchscreen. For example, one of the cool things about my car, which I never really use, but it's cool, is that it will park itself. But it's park assist. So it's like you just kind of roll up, and then it's like, dee, we're ready. And then it you still have to do like gas and brake yourself, but it'll do everything else. If you're not a good parallel parker, great feature. However, when you are pressed for time, and anybody who's lived in an urban area at all, or even just driven in one, where you're like, I just need to park. Oh my gosh, parking. It's like, to do that through my car, it's like I have to know that the spot already exists, and then like swipe, press the the screen, and don't press park out, press park in, because that I always get that one wrong. And then, that all has to happen in a really short amount of time. And it always makes me feel a little unsafe because I'm coming sort of to a stop and I'm trying to get off the road, and there's a few too many steps. in order to get to the point where it is helpful to me.
Yeah. So Stephen Kiffin, a former dean of design and pro vice chancellor at Northumbria University in the UK, said there's a natural tendency among designers to make things a little more complex than they need to be, but there's this economics behind having the displays because automakers can update features. They can update the look. For example, on a digital gauge cluster, where your speedometer, your tachometer, your fuel gauge, if it's all digital, you can start customizing it without necessarily having a new stamping factory come out with new physical gauges on it, and therefore you can kind of please more markets. But at the same time,
and save money, right?
Well, that's it. They save a lot of money. But at the same time, a study commissioned by the road safety charity I Am Road Smart in the UK discovered a big negative impact on drivers' reactions hazards came, and they were using Apple CarPlay as sort of the touchscreen interface that they were testing against. They found that the reaction times were nearly 5 times worse when a driver was using that than if they were at the drink, or in this case, drunk drive limit, like at the limit where they would be considered DUI, and nearly 3 times worse than if they were just smoking a blunt, right? So high on cannabis. So in other words, being
what if it was all 3? I don't want to be on the road with that guy.
But the idea was that having
using Apple CarPlay, that guy's a menace.
the idea of course is like you're drawing the driver's attention away from the matter at hand, which is keeping the car on the road and not hitting.
Yeah, it's not that using Apple CarPlay makes you act like a drunk. It's just takes you longer to figure out what to do.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And so it's. I can, and one of the things that this says, like, well, a lot of these companies are looking at voice activation, right? You just talk to it, like in Star Trek, like turn on the map or turn on the radio. The problem is that might not be feasible for all people. There are times where I have a sore throat and I cannot speak, or there are people who might have mobility limitations that doesn't allow them to do that. And what's interesting, they did this Wired article did a parallel comparison between jet airliners, which use a lot of touchscreens, but they don't get rid of the gauges or the knobs or the switches, right? You can put course information, you can put fuel and all those information into the display, but once you're actually flying the plane, there's still knobs and gauges that you're looking at.
It's good redundancy as well, right?
It's good to redundancy, but also like you're not like, oh, I need to find how much fuel I have, and you're cycling through 5 menus to get to it.
They should put Cherry keyboards, the equivalent of Cherry keyboards, into cars. So then then the designers get to reprogram the layout and what the icons look like, but it's still a physical button.
Yeah.
I have
go ahead. All right. For myself and my mom, I have a really old car. I do not have a GPS. I do not have a touchscreen. I, in fact, have the same GPS that I suction cup to my window that I have had since I was a teenager. Everything I have is buttons. About 6-7 years ago, my mom bought a Cadillac. She saved up for this forever. It's a fancy SUV. They made her take a course. They gave her an iPad and said, you need to take this course for your touchscreen before we give you the car. Because everything was through that touchscreen. And I can drive her car as all the basic stuff, all of the side warnings and blind spot warnings I know how to do, cruise control I know how to do. I can't use her GPS. It is just so complicated to put an address into this GPS that I cannot use it when I have to borrow my mom's car to go pick up furniture and stuff.
Well, and that's sort of, an adjacent problem is the GPS that is like natively in my car, useless. CarPlay works great because I got Google Maps or Apple Maps. Those are the only 2 I need. Or, sometimes Waze.
You can use Waze, but you don't need to. But you have the option.
Right. But, and I half the time I don't even use CarPlay because I'm like, I know where I'm going. I'm just going to listen to the radio. But if I were to use the GPS system in my car, it's like, it doesn't make any sense. I don't know what it's doing. There's a funny voice, like, please repeat. All the time I'm just like, oh my God, I don't want to talk to you anymore.
That's a very uncanny impression, I'll add.
It sounds exactly like that.
Yeah, well, my old GPS will freak out sometimes.
That's not even the physical button. That's just bad software.
That's just bad software.
Yeah.
But that kind of goes back to like, the promise is like, hey, you just talk to the car. Now, I use CarPlay quite a bit, because I'm an Apple person, and it really does do great stuff for you. If I want to text somebody on a trip, there's no way I can do that physically. That's insanity. But I can do it talking. I still feel uncomfortable doing it unless I'm like at a stoplight, where I can kind of look around a little bit. But you can do a lot of hands-free stuff that you couldn't do before. That part's great. But yeah, the whole sort of touch screen where it's like, look at all these features. There's 4 different pages of features. It's like, yeah, but I mean,
I need to drive.
Yeah. I want to use my windshield wiper now, not after 4 inputs.
This is the amazing thing. The interior of a car has close to 1,000 different modes on like things that you touch in the car, whether it's the door handles, whether it's rolling up or rolling down the windows, locking the doors, seat belts. But they're also similar that when you sit in a car, you know where the seatbelt is and how to lock it, how to lock the door, open the door. All these things are actually part of the design language. If you ever change that, people would be so flustered. Like, how do I get out of this thing? That was one of the big complaints when Teslas first rolled out. It's like, how do I open the door? How do I get out? All the stuff that I'm used to doing isn't there. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the things I think is necessary to keep in mind is that, as people change automobiles, whether it's a rental or borrowing of friends or parents, there are things, the steering wheel's always in front of me. If I turn it left, the car moves left. If I move it to the right, it turns right. Right? If it was backwards, you would have a lot. Oh, actually, no, you don't want to do that.
I was actually also thinking about, when we all went to whatever driver's ed school we went
Summer
to,
school
right?
for me.
Well, summer school for me too. But it's like, it's like down means you're turning left and up and to the right. And I remember, when I was too young to drive, I remember saying to my mom, but couldn't you just be like down and to the right and up and to the left? And she's like, no, it just doesn't work that way. You just know it. And that's the way it works. Like, where your gas and your brake is. They don't change. You just don't do that because it's a safety problem. And that feels like, going back to physical buttons for some manufacturers
for some
anyway.
Things, yeah.
Yeah. Like, sure, it's cool to have a center console that's a touchscreen. Like, that works for some things, but maybe not everything.
Yeah. Let's have voice. Let's have touchscreens. But there's some things that I think need to be physical buttons just because you're not able to look at the screen. So anything that you reasonably would need to adjust while driving should have a physical button. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Especially the window defroster. You don't want to drive with a fogged over window.
See, I don't have
Ask
a
me
physical
how I
button for
know.
that. No, I got to go into my climate control and one of my pages on the Volvo before I get what I want.
I actually ended up buying like a little plushed animal thing, and I just used it like once just to I don't know where I got it, but I just wiped the windshield once and I kept it in my car for the longest time just to clear off the windshield.
Oh, my God. I was like, what? How is that helping you drive? I see. Because condensation.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, I know y'all have thoughts because many of you do have thoughts on cars and sort of the automotive industry in general. But speaking of giving us feedback, let's check out the mailbag.
So Andrew wanted to add to our phones in school discussion from last Wednesday. He says, I have a 6th and a 4th grader. Only my 6th grader has a phone, and he doesn't always take it with him to school. I think kids should be allowed to bring phones to school, but they shouldn't be allowed to use them. If there's an emergency or the child needs to call home for something after school, then they can use their phone. Kids shouldn't be punished for having a phone, and I don't think there should be an all-out ban. Teachers and school staff should definitely take away phones if they see kids using them.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Andrew. At the same time, kids will get away with all sorts of things if they can. So, the whole kind of like, only an emergency if you have to call me is, sure, okay. But, if that phone has battery life, I think that phone's going to get used. Not by your child necessarily, but this sort of thing does happen.
Oh, my friends who are
that
teachers.
goes for the ban, too. You could say, don't bring your phones to school, and the kids are going to bring them to school anyway, and then you don't even know they have them. At least with this situation, you would know they have them. And then
Right, yeah. Like, I mean, are you going through like a bag search every day before school? I mean, I know some schools already do this.
Yep.
And, there are good reasons to do that. But, if it's all about like, does this 4th grader have a cell phone that they've lied to me about is not a great use of scholastic time.
Yeah, one of my teacher friends, you know, like those like hanging shoe racks just with all the pockets, or sometimes they're used for calculators in classrooms. Every kid has an assigned pocket. They go up, they can bring their phone, they put it in there. Occasionally you'll hear them buzz and stuff. And then in breaks between classes, they get to go check their phones, see if like their mom needs anything picked up on the way home. And I think it's a good happy medium. If there's an emergency, like generally parents will call the school to get the child, but this way, like you have your phone, and then for some kids with an IEP who do get to use their phone, then they just get to keep it at their desk.
IEP. Which reminds me, I gotta schedule one of those. But you know, it's. I mean, this is one of the things. It's a learning process, and we're at that threshold where all this stuff is changing. At some point, I'm sure we're gonna have to, whether or not we're gonna allow LLMs on a child's desk during classroom.
Yeah, with us, it was calculators, right? Calculators were new, and like, when should they be allowed? Now we don't even worry about it. We're like, oh yeah, you use calculators in certain classes and you don't in others, so it's not a big deal.
Well, also, like, I mean, if you're like, I don't know, in a trig class and like somebody gives you a calculator and you don't know how to use it, it's not going to be all that helpful. Like, it really is a good tool.
Yeah.
I mean, especially a graphing calculator, man, you can breeze through those tests so fast.
Well, but you also have to.
No, that's Sarah's point. Is that in trig class you need the graphing calculator?
Yeah, like you just. I mean, I certainly did, but it was also a requirement to take the class.
It's a tool for learning trigonometry, not a cheat.
If you gave me a TI-82 right now, I don't think I could use it anymore. I could use one from Alpha,
Tom!
I only have a TI-85.
Here he goes.
It's not a TI-82, sorry.
Wow, that is one thick calculator.
Hey, those batteries lasted forever.
That's when personal electronics were built out of solid iron.
That thing will outlive us all.
I mean, it's true.
And you know what? That thing has more processing power than the computer that landed the Apollo missions.
But it's also like,
what doesn't?
The calculator argument of like, then people don't, they're not, crunching numbers in their brain. It's like, you can't, at a certain point, you can't. You have to map it out somehow. You can't just be like, the answer is -32. Like, no, you just can't.
My dad can do that. I can't.
It's a talent, not an expected thing you can learn.
But that's a whole argument for like training kids to memorize like what's the thing? Abacus in your head, and therefore when they do all the calculations, they're imagining an abacus. I don't know. That's what that math math course was really pushing the one time.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's just say we'll figure it out. At some point,
positive.
The future will take care of itself.
I mean, it's not like these kids are running around roaming the halls with their phones, in gangs and scaring the other hall monitors.
Well, I mean, I think it depends on the school and the kid and the age and all sorts of other factors.
I mean, it'll be like the sharks and the jets.
For the most part, the whole fear of having phones in school is that kids aren't learning, right?
Yeah, they're not paying attention.
They're distracted and they're not learning as much as they used to learn in our day, back in the day. And they are learning differently, that's for sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's all or nothing. I think it's very, very dependent on the school and the kid and the teacher.
It's a sliding scale.
Yeah, my teacher friends are worried about like, oh no, if Fortnite comes back on phones, I'm going to have to take them away because they will play Fortnite during class.
Right, and that's probably because your friend is like, no, they will. They're going to do
grade
it sevens.
Again.
Right, there you go. Well, feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com is where to send thoughts about anything we talked about on this show. Speaking of talking about things, we talked about all sorts of things. So, Tom, we have been collecting some show title suggestions. Where are we at?
Yeah, if you go to showbot.tv, dtns.showbot.tv during the show, you can see the titles that have been selected and or submitted and the titles that have been voted on. And right now we have a three-way tie. Batfink 2001 suggested we call the show Copilot Copays. DJ Bastic with There's a Button for That instead of an app. Mm-hmm. Zoe Briggs Bacon with Bed Knobs and Vroom Sticks.
Ooh.
And then we also have a few others in here that are pretty good. The 100 issue. Don't get hung up on knobs. I'm seeing Waymos sailing down the sidewalk.
Spoilers, Heroes
like,
are sponsored.
Are these bots going down the sidewalk at 30 kilometers per hour?
Well, because that's what we have in LA. We have the little bots, and I was like, I was imagining
Yeah, but they're
those.
like,
I'm like, that's
they're like,
way too fast for those things to
I
go.
think
Yeah.
5 miles per hour, maybe max. Like they
No,
just
they're
putter
pretty-
along.
They just trundle along.
Yeah, they're not like, being on a motor scooter or something.
We also have from Eyewear Lederhosen, knob and order special car unit.
I love it.
Get it?
I love it.
Yeah. Also from Eyewear Lederhosen, knobs in this economy. Never a disappointing one. Button, who has the car button from C-Spawn. Sarah, what did we pick?
Well, I wear lederhosen. You were just on fire today, so we went with knob and order special car unit. Dun dun dun.
Knob and order SCU. Go check it out.
That actually would be like a really fun Law and Order, which like
If it had
all
Jimmy
about
Schmitz?
just like
It's all about
just
car
like
design.
car crime.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the crime of car design. Like,
Yeah. The
why did you
crime
design it this way?
This is
and
too
now they're
hard
in a
to
ditch.
use.
Yeah, we got to get a hold of
it's
Dick
your
Wolf and
fault.
pitch this. Just like a nice little limited series on some
Yeah.
streaming network. I'm in.
Oh, Google could totally do this, and no
Google.
one would notice.
See, it always
Right?
comes back around.
If only they had Android Auto, this wouldn't have happened. Big thanks to everybody who watches us on LinkedIn, both of you. Thank you to everybody who watches us on YouTube. We got a super sticker from C-Spawn today. Thank you for the super sticker. Very
you.
nice. Super stickers give us money. If anybody's like, what the heck's a super sticker? I addressed that on the editor's desk this week on Patreon, but that's what it is. Also, big thanks to the folks who support us on Twitch, where they can support us with subscriptions, like Charlie in Columbus, resubscribed for the 66th month. Razin, back for the 41st month. C-Spawn cheered us with 200 bits, another way for us to make some money by your support. Zoe Brings Bacon with some bits, resubscribed for 48 months at Tier 1. Zoe's been a subscriber for 72 months. It's longer than some of you have been alive. That Guy Green resubscribed for 2 months at Tier 1. All at once, they've been subscribed for 70 months. Nick with a C for 21 months at Tier 1 for a total of 34 months. Tace HTXLF subscribed with Prime over the weekend, and PC Milesy gave us some bits over the weekend as well. Thanks, everybody, for supporting us however you can, including at patreon.com/DTNS.
And if you're looking for a snazzy new way to show your support for DTNS or just a simple gift idea for a coworker or colleague, we have dozens of ideas at dailytechnewsshow.com/store. Pick up a mug, t-shirt, mousepad with our new DTNS Live logo. They're great looking ways to support us and the show, and it's just going to make your desk look all that much better. So if you have one, please send us your pictures of the merch. We'd love to see you.
You can also watch us live Monday through Friday, because that's when we do it. 4 p.m. Eastern, 2000 UTC. We are live all weekdays, all week long. You can find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. Speaking of which, we will be back tomorrow. Have a great Monday, Cinco de Mayo, for those who celebrate.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.